Transform your Christian school culture through the Flourishing Journey with Dr. Edward Bunn, ACSI Professional Development Director.
Welcome to the Flourishing Journey podcast. I'm Dr. Edward Bunn, and I will serve as your travel guide throughout this podcast series. We'll explore strategies and principles for building a school culture that truly thrives. Each month, we'll take a brief pit stop centering around a relevant, flourishing construct as together we journey into the world of ideas, research, and practice. Well, hello, flourishing practitioners, and welcome to this special episode of the Flourishing Journey podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Dave Mulder, Professor of Education and Education Department Chair at Dordt University. Today, we'll be discussing his new book, Always Becoming, Never Arriving, Developing an Imagination for Teaching Christianly. I love that, Dave. Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Edward, it's so good to be with you, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Well, I'd love to just kind of jump in today, Dave. My first question is, the title of the book. It's always becoming, it's never arriving, and then it goes on, developing an imagination for teaching Christianly. Can you unpack that a little bit? Why did you choose this specific title?
Oh, happy to. Yeah. So I have a deep conviction that becoming a Christian educator is a lifelong journey. It's kind of like working out our discipleship, right? I'm never going to arrive on this side of glory. And that's really the heart of this idea for me. We constantly get a little bit better. We become a little bit more faithful followers of Jesus. The Holy Spirit's continuing to work on me and be at work in me. And so that's kind of this sense, like I'm striving for development. I'm striving to keep growing in my craft as a teacher and in my journey of discipleship. So that's kind of the sense of always becoming, never arriving. And then that idea of developing an imagination for teaching Christianly. I just think the work of imagination, teaching is such imaginative work. It's such creative work. And so I really want to emphasize that aspect of it, that we need to have a better imagination for what this work of discipleship through education actually looks like.
Yeah, I love that. Two great bookends for your title there. I remember when I was in the classroom as a teacher, Dave, and the principal or the administrator said, "Hey, new curriculum next year," and there was this, oh, what? And so we kind of get in those rhythms, and sometimes those rhythms are good and healthy and positive, but sometimes those rhythms can hold us back from the next thing, learning, growing, to use some of your language. And so, hey, being a teacher, being a lifelong learner, growing and developing, I love that what's next attitude. So, well, that kind of throws us into question number two, Dave. This book is about teaching Christianly. Kind of unpack that phrase for us. What does this mean to you as you were writing this book and pushing this out into the hands of teachers, leaders, educators?
Yeah, I think teaching Christianly, the adverb form is really the key. And so forgive me, I'll do a short language lesson here, okay? So I think the word Christian actually works best as a noun, right? Christian is I am a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus. If you go back and read the book of Acts, in Acts 9, we read that the believers were first called Christians in Antioch. And it almost seems like it was kind of a term of derision, right? The people around them, they saw this weird group of people and, oh, they follow Christ. Oh, those little Christ. Like literally the word Christian means little Christ, right? And actually, I think that's the best way to think about it. Like I'm trying to be a little more like Jesus every day. I'm being a little Christ, right? So that's Christian as a noun. We could also think of Christian as an adjective, right? And so we describe like a Christian school or a Christian song or a Christian textbook or a Christian teacher. But the challenge, I think, for Christian as an adjective, oh man, the way the word Christian is used, it's diverse, right? There's a lot of different ways that people might interpret. What do I mean by a Christian school? What do I mean by a Christian teacher, right? And so the twist on this then is to take the adverb form, right? Because an adverb tells you not what the thing is or what kind it is, but it tells you how something happens. It describes a verb. And so when I think about teaching Christianly, I'm really trying to describe my way of teaching as trying to be like Jesus. I'm trying to teach Christianly. And so the whole idea being everything I'm doing in my practice should be a way of me living out my discipleship, the Holy Spirit at work in me, trying to make me more like Jesus. And so I think of my work then teaching Christianly, leading Christianly, administering Christianly, whatever your role in education is. It's how is what I'm doing in this space saying Jesus is Lord in this classroom. I'm subject to Christ here. And I think that the way that plays out looks different for different teachers, but this is what I mean by that idea that this is a growth trajectory for us too, right? We're never going to arrive at fully embodying, living out, teaching Christianly in the same way that I never fully arrive in my faith life on this side of glory, right? Praise be to God, I'm being made new day by day, but yeah,
Aren't
it's
we
a work
all?
in progress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. The way we teach, I loved how you said that, and just setting that goal, that daily goal of truly teaching Christianly. What am I giving my students? How
Right.
am I approaching that lesson daily? How am I approaching them and when they walk into the room? So from just their presence in the seats, the chairs, the desks, depending on your layout of your room, to the lesson itself, to the asking of questions with the curiosity flowing.
Mhm.
How are we truly teaching Christianly? I love that. So let's dig a little deeper here, Dave. And this third question, why do you think? 'Cause I love the imagination and I love being curious myself, and I love the curiosity and the vivid imaginations that students bring to the table. Um,
Yes.
but this is applied to teachers here. So why do you think imagination is so important, not for necessarily the student, but for the Christian educator?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question because
Yeah,
this is something I've been playing with for a couple of years in my own practice. Right, I have a reputation around Dort's campus for being a pretty playful instructor, and so
yeah,
I like to think I embody kind of an imaginative approach for my own teaching practice. But I'm convicted by how often I hear my students say, Dr. Mulder, I'm just not that creative. And I always want to kind of like shake them a little bit when you say it. It's like, you are created in God's image. God is the creator. And that means you were created to create. And I think teaching is very creative work. Really, we're constantly creating things. Now, it doesn't mean we're creating in the same way God creates, out of nothing just by speaking, right? We're being resourceful. We look around at what we have at our disposal and we think, oh, I could do it like this. Oh, I could use this. But I think that really gets at this idea where we're developing an imagination, a mindset, a way of attacking whatever the challenge is ahead of us to say, oh, I can bring my faith to bear on this too. I can bring whatever resources I have at my disposal to bear on this challenge. And so the way I always frame it when I'm working with pre-service teachers or in-service teachers, I like to think about it in terms of three loves that we have to have. Like we have to have all three of these, right? You have to love who you teach. This is part of our teacher imagination. Like if you don't love your students, they will know, right? And I think that's the barrier for
yes,
entry to this whole profession, right? You got to love
yeah,
kids, but loving kids isn't enough. So a second part of the imagination is you also have to love what you teach. Right? You got to love who, but you also have to love what you teach. And this gets at the content piece, right? We've got to love the subjects that we're teaching. We got to love the kids, but we also have to love. If I'm a science teacher, I got to love studying
yeah,
creation. If I'm a literature teacher, I have to love reading and writing and diving into trying to analyze and understand, right? So you got to love who, you got to love what. And then the third love is the how piece of it. And this is the one that I think we need to all keep growing in as educators because, again, we never arrive. There's always more we can learn about how to do this work to the best of our ability and to God's glory. And so in the book, that's really where I go. We talk a little bit about loving who you teach. We talk a little bit about loving what you teach, but especially getting into the how. This is where I think that imaginative work starts to come out of us. When we think about creative ways to actually plan lessons that are going to hook kids, because if you get them, you can take them places, right? But you got to get them.
yes,
Can we get into a mindset where I can try to, I think assessment's the most mystical part of teaching, right? Like, how do I get inside my students' heads to know what they know and to see things through their eyes? Well, that's a work of imagination. When I think about the kinds of lessons, the kinds of instructional moves I'm going to use in the classroom, that's also imaginative work. Like, how do I share power with my students? Sometimes I have to leverage power. Sometimes I have to give up power so that they're going to learn, right? And so that's the work of imagination. All these different parts. The professionalism aspects of this work that we're doing. How do I engage with my colleagues? How do I engage with my administrator? How do I engage with that difficult parent who is giving me a really hard time, right? That's the work of imagination. So anyway, that's my real conviction in all of this. Like, we have creativity that's part of the way God has created us to be, but sometimes we need permission to play. And so the work of creativity, the work of imagination, I think, is both permission to play and then really taking the opportunity to practice. So playfulness and practice. And if we can put those two things together, I think that's really what's going to boost our capacity to really live out this approach to teaching Christianly.
Oh man, what wisdom for us today,
I hope
Dave.
so, but yeah.
Yeah. It's I love love the who, love the what, love the how. And I think back, I've asked students, teachers teaching at the university level or soon to be teachers at the university level, what teacher, what type of teacher most impacted your life? And it was that one every time that loved the who, loved the what, and loved the how, hands down. Now they may not have used that specific language that you've used and unpacked today, but that was the one, right? That was the type of teacher. So, well, thanks for unpacking just in a short amount of time today a little bit about your book, Dave, and some of the principles that people will find in reading of the book. So. Just want to say thank you, Dave, for journeying with us around your new book, Always Becoming, Never Arriving, and all things flourishing, right? So thank you, Dave, for being with us.
Oh, it is an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I do have to ask this. What kind of shoes are you wearing today?
If I could get my foot up into the shot here. So I'm wearing my Boise State blue Converse All-Stars today. That's my go-to
I love
shoe.
it.
You bet.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. For those that don't know, Dr. Dave Mulder, he talked about being playful. He has great shoes and he wears them well.
Thank you.
So can you show our viewers just real quick the book?
Absolutely.
So they can see what it looks like. Yeah, Always Becoming, Never Arriving.
That's the one.
I recommend it. If you can get it and read through it with your team. Again, thanks, Dave. And I just want to say to everyone watching and listening today, join us next month for a new episode on the Flourishing Journey podcast.
The Flourishing Journey is a presentation of the Association of Christian Schools International. Foster a flourishing school culture by visiting acsi.org/flourishing.